friends, this is Christopher Davis-Shannon, and today we're going to be learning the old jazz classic, Exactly Like You. As always, if you're just looking for the play-along video with the chords, you can skip right to the end of the video. But throughout this, we're going to talk about the history of the song, both sections of the tune, a little chord melody intro, as well as some chord substitutions that are common and we can use throughout the tune. Exactly Like You dates back to 1930. It was originally written for the Broadway musical International Review by the songwriting team of Dorothy and Jimmy Mchugh. Now, this show wasn't exactly a hit, but luckily there were a bunch of recordings of this tune by popular singers of the day. Also out of this same exact show that was a flop, we have the tune On the Sunny Side of the Street. Now, the oddity about this song, Exactly Like You, is that it wasn't really a major hit in the jazz world in the beginning. While Ruth Etting did record it early on as a popular number, it wasn't until 6 years later in 1936 that Benny Goodman featuring Lionel Hampton had a massive hit with this, and then Louis Armstrong also had a recording, and it quick became adopted by the jazz musicians as a solo vehicle of the day. So this tune is really just divided into two sections. It's an A, B, A form. So let's start off just looking at the A section. So looking at the A section of this tune, we are in the key of B flat and we'll be starting on the tonic chord or the 1 chord, a B flat chord. But for our purposes, we're actually going to make this a B flat 6th chord by adding our open G string. So it'll be open, 2, 1, 1. As we've talked about before on this channel, many times in these early jazz tunes, we can substitute these 6th chords to give a more open sort of sound as opposed to just playing our basic B flat triad. But in addition, in this tune, the 6th is also contained in the melody, so we're helping support that melody by bringing in this extra chord tone. So we're going to strum this B flat 6th chord for 2 full measures or 8 beats. We'll go up to a dominant 2 chord next. So what do I mean by that? Generally in the key of B flat, we would have a C minor 7th would be our 2 chord because it has an E flat in the key of B flat. But in this case, we're going to make this a C 7th or C dominant 7th, which is going to bring us more strongly harmonically to our next chord of the F7. So for a C 7th, you're welcome to just play your basic root position 1, open, open, open 1 that we all know. A couple other options that you can have on this, though, we don't always have to play that one. Voicing is my personal favorite, 3, open, open 3. So that gives us the B flat and the C up top as well. Very similar grouping of notes, but we just include the octave C. In addition to this, we could also use our bar chord C7th, and I much prefer this in this context, where we can have barring across the 3rd fret, and then our middle finger on the 4th fret, that E natural on the C string. And I prefer this. It gives us a little bit more control over the left hand muting for swing strumming, and also I think it just sounds a bit better in this context. So here are the first 4 measures. We're starting out on that B flat 6th, up to C7. What I like to do, and many other players, is in between these 2 chords, we can add what's called a passing chord. So this isn't a chord that necessarily everyone in the band would be playing, but we would insinuate it from some of the members in the rhythm section. What I like to do here is for beats 3 and 4 of the 2nd measure is to add a B diminished 7th chord. So we just get this nice walk up to get to our C dominant 7th chord. So we can think of this B diminished chord, it's very, very similar to a G7th, right? We're just adding this A flat down here. Our G7th gets us nicely to a C. So here's what it sounds like with that passing chord in there. So we can add that in there if you want, but feel free to leave it out. Then after this, we're just going to our regular old F7th chord, 2, 3, 1, 3. There's our F7th. We're going to play this for 2 measures. Now, many players, if you're familiar with this song, we do add a C minor 7th for the 2nd half of the 1st measure of the F7th. So we play 2 beats of F7th, C minor 7th barred across the 3rd fret, right back to the C, to the F7th there. That is totally an optional chord that you can use in here. So we're playing that for 2 measures, our F7th, and we finally resolve to a B flat sixth again. We're going to play that for one measure, and then with our turnaround, we're going to have a C minor seventh all the way across the third bar, up to an F seventh, bringing us back to an A section. So here is the entire A section of the tune, and I'm just going to throw in that little passing chord as well as the C minor seventh as a passing chord that we were talking about earlier. So it's going to sound a little bit something like this. 2, 3, 4. That brings us right back to our second A section, which is identical except for the very last bar. Instead of doing our turnaround on a C minor seventh to an F after we resolve to the B flat sixth, we're going to make this into a B flat seventh chord by just barring across the first fret and leaving the second finger right where it is on the D on the second fret of your C string. So here's the last few measures just giving us that B flat sixth. So I'll start on the F seventh chord. And that leads us exactly where we need to go to an E flat sixth to start our B section. So as we get to the B section, we've just played a B flat seventh, which is telling us very strongly that we are likely going up to an E flat chord. That is our natural resolution. That's exactly what we're going to do. On the first bar, we're going to start on an E flat sixth chord, which is identical to the C minor seventh that we played earlier in the tune. But as we always talk about with naming these chords, we need to be wary of thinking about the bass movement. And if there was a bass player playing with us, they would certainly be playing an E flat here, not a C. So we would call this an E flat sixth in this context. We're going to strum this for 4 beats, and then we're going to use a very typical progression. We're coming from our 4 chord in E flat down to a minor 4 chord. So we'll now have an E flat minor sixth, which means we're only changing one note here. And that note changes our third. The G in our E flat is going to be brought down to a G flat. So while we're just barring across the third fret here, we need to make a full change to get this G flat on the second fret of our E string in here. So we're going to end up using our middle finger on the third fret of our G string on the B flat, our ring finger directly next to it on the E flat, that's our root on the C string on the third fret. Our first finger will cover that minor third, the G flat, on the second fret of our E string, and then we have finally the sixth up top, our C under the pinky. So here's our first 2 measures. You can hear this strong leading voice to get us right back to home, our B flat. We resolve that right to a B flat. Strum that for 2 measures. And again, we can add in our B diminished passing tone here. Remember this chord from earlier because if we look ahead, we're going up to a C minor seventh here. And I mentioned earlier that that B diminished seventh looks a mighty lot like a G seventh chord, doesn't it? And that G seventh, if we think about whenever we play G seventh, it really makes us want to go to a C major chord or just a C chord in general. In this context, we're going to a C minor seventh chord. So by placing this B diminished seventh here, it leads our ear to thinking that this is a C minor seventh as opposed to the E flat sixth, which we just played. Since we don't have a bass player with us, it's nice to throw in some of these passing tones to insinuate the harmony that we would have if we have a full band. So let's listen to this from the beginning of the bridge, getting up to that C minor seventh. So we're starting on E flat sixth, E flat minor sixth, then to B flat sixth, B diminished. So you can hear that the tonality of that C minor seventh, that bar all the way across the third fret, changes from where we just had it sounding major, and now it sounds minor as a C minor seventh. And we're just doing our typical 2-5 here. We're going to play this C minor seventh for 1 bar, to an F seventh for 1 bar, and then we're going to do a 1-6-2-5 turnaround. We play this in so many songs. So a B flat sixth to G seventh, And you can feel free to sub in the B diminished here as we keep talking about they're very, very similar chords and function almost identically. We only have one note difference. So we can either play G 7th or B diminished 7th here to a C minor 7th to an F 7th. So here's our whole bridge and what it sounds like. 2, 3, 4. And that right there brings us back to our final A section, which is identical to our first A section. Now for the intro to this tune, I love to just use a single A section in a chord melody format to get us into the song. Luckily, most of this uses chord tones, so they're baked into what we're already playing, and we don't have too many weird positions that we need to play in to make the melody come out of these chords. So we're starting on the B flat 6th chord as we did before, but our melody note is the D on the 5th fret of our A string, so we'll put that up top. You can feel free also, if you just take a G major shape and slide it on up to your 5th fret, giving you open 5, 6, 5. That's also B flat 6th. If you're playing on a tenor instrument, you might not be able to make this reach here very easily, so you can play this for the first chord of the chord melody if you would prefer. But I like to have it down here because it just means I don't have to move as much. So we do this, and then our next melody note is a quarter note A. So we'll just lift this up, have an open A string, and then we're going up to a C, and then a G finally on the 4th beat of this first measure. So as we get the G with a high G string on here, all that we actually have to do is just a partial strum bouncing off. So here's the first measure of our chord melody. And then we just finally put down our B flat 6th and we'll strum through that chord. Remember, we're going up to a C major chord now, or C 7th chord. And in this, the melody is going to repeat itself just over a C major chord. So we need to make the same movements that we just did, but we're going to do them without a B flat 6th chord down, but a C chord. So open, 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 and we'll start on that D, lift everything, then up to a C, partial strum on the G, and resolve to our regular old C 7th chord that we've been playing since the first day we picked up our uke. So let's listen to those first 4 measures of just this repeated melody over top of 2 different chords. So it's going to sound like this. As we go on, the melody is going to change a bit, but it's really the same sequence, just brought down a few steps. Over now our F 7th chord, same as we were playing in the rest of the A section while we strummed, but we're not going to put the pinky up top because we want an A in the melody. So this will be the F 7th that you've learned probably rather early on. 2, 3, 1, open. And we're going to pluck that, and this is where it gets a little odd in the chord melody because we have now notes that are in the inner voices of the chord, so we need to isolate those. So we're going to strum all the way through on beat 1, and then we're going to pluck with our thumb the E flat that's already down the 3rd fret of our C string, and then lift up your middle finger, pluck the G, and then we're going to move on down to a D on the 2nd fret of our C string, and then just resolve right to our normal old F 7th chord, but we will mute the A string so that the F rings out as a melody note. Let me play this very slowly for you so you can hear all these notes. Right, so we just need to pluck those inner strings and we have the entire melody. Now in the key of B flat, we can't actually reach the last note because it goes down to an octave B flat. If you have a low G, you could play that, but I do not. So we're just going to resolve this to our regular old turnaround, B flat 6th, so we can do the B diminished walk up, C minor 7th, F. So let's listen to the entire chord melody nice and slowly. Now let's put it all together. 1, 2, 3, 4. I know why I've waited, know why I've been true. Prayed each night for someone exactly like you. Why should we spend money on a show or two? No one does those love scenes exactly like you. You make me feel so great, I want to hand the word to you. You make me understand each foolish little scheme I'm scheming, dream I'm dreaming. Now I know why mother taught me to be true. She meant me for someone exactly